The last 4 days have been something else. Originally, we were talking about how this podcast was going to react to the conference championship games, and we are doing that. But within just 24 hours as we're recording, we have one of the greats retiring, and then we are on the brink of possibly a huge landmark case regarding the NFL and hiring. So whether it's legal issues, whether it's legendary statuses, or whether it's stellar games, we got you covered right now with another productive conversation regarding this postseason. So right here, we are reacting to the conference championship games and hitting on some other big stories. So let's get to it once and for all. Brian McKeon is with us today. What's going on, Brian?
Nothing much. Living the dream.
Living the dream. Love to see it. And then Alex Ranniello's in the building. What's up? Oh, you're muted. I hope you muted, Alex. Can you try that one more time for us?
Oh, my bad. I'm an idiot. Okay. I'm back. Hi, guys. Loving the game this past weekend. Here to talk some football. Happy to see y'all.
I have to say, first things first, Alex, you got a new coach coming in with Josh McDaniels. You got any quick words on that?
Hopefully it fares better than his first go around in Denver. I was just waiting. I wasn't holding my breath because I thought he was going to pull Indianapolis from a couple of years ago. So I wanted to actually see him in the building first. But I'm open. I'm welcoming him with opening arms, and yeah, it should be good.
No doubt about it. Good stuff. So like I said, guys, before we get into some stellar and entertaining games from the past week, and a lot has taken place, especially 24 hours amongst this podcast recording. I mean, where do we go? Why don't we start with the negative? Oh, it's not. I mean, it's negative, but we'll start with the hard hitting story first before we get lighted. But just reported today, as we record on Wednesday, the 1st of February, that former coach of the Miami Dolphins, Brian Flores, has filed a lawsuit against the National Football League and naming prominent teams, especially the New York Giants, the Miami Dolphins, and Denver Broncos. And he's filing a suit alleging that there is widespread racial prejudice, discrimination, and a undermining use of the Rooney Rule, which is a rule where, when in terms of hiring coaches in the NFL, you have to have at least 2 minority candidates in that process. So this is all taking place today. It was released a 58-page PDF of the actual complaint itself. And on the brink of Super Bowl week, this overthrows a lot that's going on right now. So like I said, a lot to take in as stories develop, and we'll have various reactions taking place. But bottom line, Brian Flores is suing the NFL for pretty much discrimination. And some of the takes that to sink in from here, and help from SB Nation, who gives these points for us. First, we had Brian Flores alleged that he was pushed to tank for the Miami Dolphins, that literally Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross allegedly told Brian Flores to lose games in order to improve their draft position, almost $100,000 per game. This specifically regarding the 2019 season, where the Dolphins went 5-11. They were 5th overall that season. Then that's when they drafted Tua Tagovailoa. Some other things named in this lawsuit: that Stephen Ross wanted Flores to tamper with the quarterback and to bring somebody to the Dolphins. Rumors is that could be Tom Brady, that could be Deshaun Watson, but apparently he was going under the table to help bring that quarterback to Miami. And some other things that take place with the besides the Dolphins, you had Brian Flores was a candidate for the New York Giants football head coaching position, which ultimately was taken over, and Brian Daboll was hired. And me, as a Giants fan, I wanted Flores originally, but they ultimately picked the offensive coordinator from the Bills and Brian Daboll. And here's the issue there, that they allegedly hired Brian Daboll before they interviewed Flores. Brian Daboll, a white coach, and Brian Flores, a person of color, never getting that chance. And then the other thing that took place is that apparently and allegedly, the suit did claim that the Denver Broncos were unprofessional and underprepared, where they did not take his candidacy so seriously that they allegedly showed up drunk and hung over to the meeting. That's, I said, three main teams under the radar in the Giants, Broncos, and Dolphins, and naming the NFL as a whole for undermining the Rooney Rule, as again, the rule where you are supposed to interview minority candidates, and allegedly all the teams treat that rule differently. So if we look at the spectrum right now, out of 30 teams, there's only three. At the moment, there's only three coaches who are minorities. You have Robert Saleh, who's a Muslim, coaching the Jets. You have Ron Rivera, who's a Latino, coaching the Raiders. And we have Mike Tomlin, who is coaching the Steelers, an African-American. And now there's still 27 other teams to, evaluate. Now, again, not to go much into a rabbit hole, and I know there's a lot of information at once, and this isn't exactly the time to debate, go deeper into politics, racial issues in America, but it's fair to say there is still a systematic racial issue in the United States that we are trying to fix. And then with stories like this, there's something to at least talk about and evaluate when it comes to the Rooney Rule. And yes, the adage is always interview the best candidate. But where can you go if you are, showing up to, it looks bad when you have teams allegedly showing up to interviews where they're unprofessional and drunk, or they already hired somebody and not giving a person of color a chance. Again, a lot of tightrope issues to discuss. And then you have Stephen Ross of Miami Dolphins, who sounds like the most corrupt owner ever. We talk about taking a lot, but then, if you're actually going to pay somebody to take, that ruins the integrity of the game. And this might even lead to, if it's proven true, then I think Stephen Ross will have to stick to his real estate business and he'll have to sell the team. And then, maybe the Maras too, if they're, undermine the Rooney Rule like that. I think the only penalty at the moment is draft picks, but it doesn't look good, especially in a time where we're always talking about race, it seems. So again, I talked a lot with that, a lot to wrap our head around. Basically, I'm just going to throw it to you guys. What do you think of this lawsuit? Whether it's the Stephen Ross stuff or the racial issue or the, I should say the Rooney Rule issues. A lot to take in, guys. I know, but what are your initial thoughts with everything?
Like 5,000 questions, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. That's cool. You're right. Well, why don't we break it up into two parts then? We'll start with the Rooney Rule stuff. Okay, as I said, Broncos, Giants, not looking good. If we're trying to promote equality, you should also give that respect back to no matter who your candidates are, people of color or not. So I guess I have to say, do you think these allegations are true from what you say? Do you feel that the Broncos and Maras would do such a, Broncos owners who are trying to sell the team, or the Maras and the Giants would do such a thing? I don't know. A lot of evidence seems that is possible if they could prove it. What do you guys think there? Do you think this is the case or something being blown out of proportion? Or you could just waiting to see if more information will come out. Like I said, this is less than 24 hours old. So what do you guys think there? Do you think this is actually happening?
That's kind of my default position always, is just wait for more information to come out, because we ultimately always live in a culture where it's better to be first before being right, which is the complete antithesis of journalism, period. You guys are both very educated guys. You're smart. You see the world around it the way you see it. But I didn't even hear about this story until like about an hour ago. So I'm not really like ready to comment on it per se. But it's no surprise that all these stories in the news are always viewed through the lens of race. Like, we're obsessed with race. So I think there's some truth to what he said, but again, I think the truth always lies somewhere between both sides of the story. So I'd like to hear what the actual organization has to say. I think when you talk about the Stephen Ross as an owner, being a poor owner, I think the symptoms that Brian Flores' case is probably outlining, it has more to do with the incompetence and the poor management of the organization, opposed to just automatically assuming racial motivations. But I'll let you guys take it over.
Mm-hmm. You hear that? I hear that. What do you say, Brian?
I completely agree with Alex. Like, we definitely need more information, and we need to hear about both sides. Like on the Broncos, just on a not even going racial right now, just professional. If you have people showing up drunk or hungover or ill prepared, it's the NFL. You get paid six figures. You show up in a three-piece suit or a nice outfit, and you go there and be professional, and you sit down and you give everyone respect. The fact that if that actually is the case, which I don't know yet, if we need more information, those people should be fired and banned from any professional work ever, because it's not fair. It's not fair to a coach who technically shouldn't have gotten fired in the last two seasons, has put up 9+ win seasons, had one of the best events in NFL history of going 9 in a row after going 0-7, I think at one point, or 0-8. To not get the respect for a very, a coach needed team that needs the discipline and guidance of the Denver Broncos, who just haven't gotten it right since Super Bowl 50.
They just hired a black coach like a few years ago, Vance Johnson, right? Or Van.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's just immediately easy to assume that everything's just out of racism, but it's probably just more out of incompetence 9 times out of 10.
Yeah. For the Broncos, I would say that. Now, and I hope that race doesn't get involved in that, because, it's unfortunate in 2022 that would be the reason why you wouldn't be professional. With the Giants, like if you break the Rooney Rule, you should lose draft picks. Like that's, I feel like everyone in an interview needs to get the equal respect they deserve and, have a fair shot at it. Finding out that, you don't have you're about to have your interview and the job's already gone is like, why even go on that interview? What's the point? I'm just a pawn so my team doesn't lose draft picks. It's disrespectful. And, for me, as I've said it with the Giants, I thought they should go back to their true self and get a defensive-minded coach in Brian Flores or like a Mike Zimmer. So I personally don't think it was the right coaching decision, but I digress.
Yeah, guys.
I have a quick question, Matt. Like, what's your opinion on the Washington organization, Dan Snyder aside? Because we condemn them constantly for Dan Snyder's incompetence and a lot of issues up top in their management, but they do check off that racial box when it comes to their staff and their coaching staff with what's his face? Sorry,
Ron Rivera.
So what's your thoughts and opinions? Because it feels like it's easy to flip the script if they do check the boxes that some of these quotas that are instilled with the Rooney Rule imply.
Yeah, my answer to that first is I just wanted to give what the NFL said, and it will tie into my reaction to what you're saying. This is the official NFL statement that was released just 2 hours ago. The NFL, quote, "The NFL and our clubs are deeply committed to ensuring equitable employment practices and continue to make progress in providing equitable opportunities throughout our organizations. Diversity is core to everything we do. And there are a few issues on which our clubs and our internal leadership teams spend more time. We will defend against these claims, which are without merit." Now, with the without merit quote, I think that contradicts, because there's plenty of examples of that. And I think this is if we're going to focus on the Washington football team, which will probably be named differently when we drop this pod tomorrow. I think when it comes to hiring the correct coaches, it shouldn't matter. You hired a Latino who led you to the playoffs last year. I don't know the exact personnel top to bottom, but I think at least in those boxes, it seems that they care about, it seems they just care about putting the right people in the right positions. And so far, so good. And, they fell short in the playoffs this year. I think that they've been fine in that sense. Obviously, Dan Snyder and the investigation with the NFL. Can we really trust with the NFL if they do the investigation themselves? I don't know. They seem to get a slap on the wrist, especially the stuff with Dan Snyder and the allegations and John Gruden from this past fall.
They do everything they possibly can to sidestep with public perspective.
Yeah.
That's what they've always done. That's why they've taken the proactive steps with everything in the past, 10, 15, 20 years since Goodell came into office.
Exactly. Huge weakness of Goodell, especially, is the PR of the NFL. And this
absolutely.
it just looks like another mess on the heads. At least you would wish this took place after the Super Bowl, but this is going to be talked about throughout the media days. All the players are going to have something to say and comment. So this is turning into a real shit show. And what can I say? I figure with this suit that I hope will find justice, assuming this will take months. I think Blind Flores is, and he said in his quote that he's pretty much sacrificing his coaching career for this. And I like, this is the time to reevaluate and truly investigate. And I hope they have other arbitrators and other people investigating. That's what I hope, that this lawsuit can confirm it once and for all. Brian, you had your hand up.
You know, after you said that NFL comment, can you read the part where it said equitable in the first sentence again one more time?
There you go. That's a word.
Right here. The exact quote from the NFL. The NFL and our clubs are deeply committed to ensuring equitable employment practices and continue to make progress in providing equitable opportunities throughout our organizations.
Okay, so for that part right there, ready? NFL should then relook at their hiring process. I'm not even going to talk about race or minority or anything like that right now. Why is it allowed that you can request a head coaching interview of a playoff team's offensive and defensive coordinator while they're scheming for a week in a playoff game where that's not their main priority, a head coaching job? So you have like a guy like Dan Quinn, Kellen Moore, Dable, all of these guys in the middle of playoff contention, worrying about the next game, but they have to go on a plane and go interview. How is that equitable in that sense to a non-playoff OC, a DC, or someone not in the NFL right now? How is that equitable? So before we even get there, just even the basis of interview, the way in which they conduct interviews and they allow the actual requests of interviews, there's already a flaw.
Well, and they have a messaging problem too, because I was under the presumption, unless I'm completely missing the boat on this, but when he was brought in from New England to take over Miami's coaching job, it wasn't necessarily an attractive job because they were under the impression that the team was tanking. And they gave him the opportunity based on his merit because he was very successful as a special team, as a coordinator and an assistant coach. So he comes in based on merit, but he leaves on racism. I'm kind of confused.
Yeah, that's the very contradicting line, with or without merit. There's clearly an issue here, and you can't give us more of an example of your stereotype and being tone deaf with these issues. I do think this is an issue worth exploring and evaluating. And then when you have quotes like that, falling all over the place, this is exactly why there needs to be some type of an investigation here. And ultimately, Brian, you're right. I think they shouldn't even allow these interviews to take place during the playoffs, specifically make it for after the season. Mm-hmm. You know, like one popular candidate that was always mentioned was Eric Bieniemy, but he was obviously going to conference championships and head coaching jobs. But ultimately, and people said, like, why didn't you hire him? Well, how could he interview for the job when, trying to build a dynasty there?
How could he be 100% focused on an interview when he has to try to play the Bills or tries to play the Bengals? That doesn't make sense to me.
And I think, and I'm not discounting that. I think that some nepotism does exist within the league. There's no doubt about it. But I just think it's very easy and accessible to assume that everything is done out of nepotism. I think at the end of the day, 95% of these teams and franchises and organizations want to win, and they're going to hire the best guys available. I think that the standards and practices that, Brian, you're mentioning probably just need to be reformed out of the sake of having a better PR perspective to the rest of the league. And I think that not only that, but I think as you clean that up too, it's going to ensure that everybody's focused on winning. Because my biggest criticism, not to sidestep here, but to go back to college, when Brian Kelly got hired at LSU, everybody came down on him, especially from Notre Dame's perspective, because they were in the middle of fighting for a college football playoff position. Like, they still could have made it by the last week, and they left all those kids in shambles, and no one really mentioned it, but it was kind of the same thing that you're alluding to, Brian.
Yeah, it's totally not fair. And then if you think of, with the whole race issue, if you have a minority owner who's also like Eric Bieniemy in a playoffs, position like there's another, step down, an obstacle that he has to now, overcome.
I just think it's a self-eatable situation with race. Like it's never gonna fulfill itself to its maximum potential. It's always something that they're gonna strive for to nauseam, but it's like it's a kind of inexhaustible thing.
Yeah, the
I know
conversation
that's
will
unpopular,
continue
but
on.
I don't care.
Anyways, and also just the last thing on the Miami owner, right? And well, I'm already blanking the name. I already said his name, but the Miami owner, Stephen
Stephen
Ross.
Ross.
So a little bit more serious with the tanking and stuff. And back to you, Alex. I really think his plan backfired on him. He hired too good of a coach. He
He did.
literally, I think that's the ultimately what happened. And he clearly doesn't take the integrity out of the game. And sometimes I think, especially after firing Flores after winning your last 9 games, and then these accusations take place, when there's smoke, there's fire. There's something to evaluate, even in this, a character assassination, really. But
Yeah.
I mean, the tampering too, I don't know how big of that deal is really. It clearly didn't work or anything, but the actual paying somebody to point shave like that,
Yeah.
you got to kick him out of his job for that. You got to force him to sell the team. And then imagine being a Dolphins fan hearing that too.
Well, that's why I immediately went to like the final point that like it is more of a symptom of the fact that the organization's been incompetent post Dan Marino era, because they haven't had much success in 30 plus years. They've always been in kind of a constant state of rebuild. I think it's just easy and safe to assume that we can put things on race with, like, that's why I was never, like, when it was brought to my attention about an hour ago, I read a little bit quickly, but I was never really worried about Brian Flores' future in the league, because he can win. He's a damn good coach. And I know that he got his job on merit, and I'm quite sure that he's going to continue to get more coaching positions and opportunities in the future based on that as well. That's why I'm just a little disheartened that they would reach for something like this as a lawsuit already so soon.
Right. Yeah, and ultimately, like you guys said at your initial points, this is a story that needs to really dug deep. For all we know, it could be thrown out the water, even though there are legitimate questions to discuss and topics, especially regarding the Rooney Rule and how much of merit does it bring and stuff like that. But or this could be a fight that takes many months, and then we can have a legit reevaluation of the hiring process, and we give all people, whether people of color or both the men and women, your orientation or whatever makes you, we could give those opportunities fairly, and then they can be more accurate in the equitable equality quote that they were preaching. So
equality, not equity.
Oh wait, yeah, why I said the equality.
Equity means equal outcomes.
You're right. Exactly, equity. So we'll see if we'll see how this plays out in the coming months. And then the other thing, the other big news, and I really think this type of story was the only thing that overshadowed it. Tom Brady announced himself on social media that he is leaving the game after 22 seasons. First, how about Adam Schefter just botching Brady's retirement? Though he stuck to his story. ESPN stuck to his story too. He clearly ruined the surprise party for all of us. Now, and then we have Tom Brady calling it a career. Not that much of a surprise per se. He was on a contract for one more season, but I think he just knows it's time to go. And one final battle, he came up short, but he's the GOAT for a reason, like him or not. So why don't we talk about this in retirement? What were your initial thoughts, whether the Schefter report on Saturday or today when it was official that Tom Brady is retiring?
So I was happy and sad. I'm sad because I watch the last, I would say, great QB of my childhood really retire. Besides like Aaron Rodgers, I got, he really peaked more, I would say, as I got into like my teens. It's sad, because I just remember in my entire life of football, I remember Tom Brady. Now, sad because he's, beat the Cowboys a few times and he's caused some upsets in this, that, and the other thing. But I'm also happy for him because you know what? He's leaving on being being the top 2 quarterback in the league. Like I will never know the decline of Tom Brady. I knew the decline of Michael Jordan because I saw him start to slowly age on the Wizards. I saw the decline of Peyton Manning as his neck was gone and his arm was limp. You know what I mean? I watched the decline of, other players like DeMarco Murray, and then he retired after 7 seasons. I'm just thinking as a Dallas fan. Des Bryant, I literally watched him literally fall apart. So I like that he's leaving healthy, still being able to play. I'm also disappointed, though, because I would like to see him play and get to 100,000 passing yards because he's at 84, and the way he's going, he plays 4 more seasons, he could get that. But that's just a milestone thing. That would be like one big FU to the NFL. Again, I'm the greatest quarterback ever. Good for him. Enjoy. I think that we won't see him as an announcer. I don't think we'll ever see him as a coach. I could see him as maybe like a president of like a players association or something like that, something with the Hall of Fame. But I also see TB12 possibly becoming the Jordan for football. I could easily see him going into business and marketing and branding that like crazy because everybody loves Tom Brady, and just going to town with that.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with everything you just said. I mean, I'm happy for him too. When I congratulate him if I ever saw him in person. The only one drawback, I wish someone from his camp wouldn't have leaked the news on Saturday. I think every player is kind of due to have at least that ownership in their hands to debut the news and the information the way they feel and choose to see fit. But I mean, we say it a million times on the show, like he's the GOAT. I mean, whether people want to agree or if it's Montana or this and that, it's really not up for debate at this point. I just think that he's exhausted every opportunity that he's perceived in his career, and he's at the age where he's fulfilled everything that he's been asked to do and more. His stats will really go untouched besides the one you alluded to, Brian, and I think that he's looking at it strictly from a personal perspective. I think that he wants to spend more time with his kids and his wife. They have more money than God in the bank. He can segue into that second phase of his career where, like you said, I truly think that the TB12 method and the branding and marketing around his products and what he can offer is a testament to how he's sustained his high level success at the top, and how he's maintained his fitness, and his work ethic and his discipline. That's something that can carry him for 30 plus years constantly on the market, because everybody wants to know that secret formula that kept him ageless all these years, and he can brand and surround himself behind that mystique and continue to have success. So I couldn't be happier for him. I think that he's the greatest who ever laced it up, and we'll see what he does with his opportunities the next few years.
Yeah, the only people who can prevent Tom Brady from winning in the NFL is Eli Manning, Nick Foles, Giselle Bundchen now. So I think he did it the best way he can without a corny retirement tour, and also just not getting hurt and not having a bad hit that takes it out. It's glad that prophecy will never be fulfilled. They always say just one hit away, but nope. Mm-hmm. He got through it. He only missed 1 season. And that's really fascinating too, to think, Brian, that one, he is 44 years old on the top of his game and he's retiring too early. And then 2,
that's the greatest thing about
it. I know.
There really wasn't a decline. It wasn't a bad season. You saw, as you mentioned, all the greats went down. And also Derek Jeter, he had a horrible last season.
Yeah.
Like
Kobe too.
So I think that's the next great thing also to add on to your point, Alex. The next phase of his career in life is, how did I stay 45 in a 25-year-old's body? As well with that, and probably make films. I know he has the production company and just be a major personality. Yeah. He's a fun follow on social media. And even though I'm a Giants fan, I don't have any gripe with Tom Brady. He brought a lot of joy with my family. My dad's a big Tom Brady fan, and mother, and all those times he watched all those major games on both the Pats and the Bucks. I'll never take those for granted. Some of the best memories is watching Tom Brady throughout my life. And that's pretty cool to cherish that. And then on to the next one. So,
sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
2 comments. First, I'm going to say Tom Brady is your team's quarterback's favorite quarterback, and that's how I'm always going to remember him. And second, right before we get into the next thing, I got one thing to say about tampering, but Alex, you can go first.
Tampering, yeah. That's a whole nother episode. We could just dive into the conspiracies behind the Patriots dynasty, but we'll leave that for another show. No, I mean, I was just gonna kind of continue what both of you guys alluded to, which is he really left the game with like the leaving the next generation of players and young student athletes the understanding that you can win at the highest level despite your limitations physically and the things that keep you back. You can transcend all of that if you're coachable. You get up before everybody and you go to bed after everybody. You have the right work ethic. You listen. You open yourself up in the locker room to all the guys around you. Never take a day for granted. All the intangibles that you really can't teach in sports, he really culminated. He was really like the ultimate teams player and teams quarterback. So I think that's the biggest takeaway that I see looking at the entire arc and scope of his career. Yeah.
You got that final point, Brian?
Yeah. So why are professional sports one of the only professions where tampering isn't a criminal offense?
Because we like it too much and put too much in gambling.
But think about the amount of money, though, that tampering loses in gambling, and think about any type of other profession. First of all, the person would probably get beat up by someone. And second off, they would go to jail. If this was stocks on the, we've all seen, what's the movie, Wall Street with Gordon Gekko and everyone, he'd be in jail. So I just like,
I'll give you an equatable version. It's a congressman with in trading stocks.
Yeah.
It's just as criminal. It should not be allowed. That's why they're trying to pass a bill right now on it. It's bullshit. Yeah. It's been going on for years.
Ooh.
Like if you think about like the Saints when they did Bountygate, like think of Bountygate. That's literally saying let's try to hurt someone. That literally is assault by definition. And how
from
that
the
is
Saints,
How isn't that criminal? It doesn't make sense to me.
Any like fight you saw between a player on the field and stuff like that, you could get a fighting charge, assault charge for that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Alex. You were saying?
Oh, I was just gonna say, did you guys see that series on Netflix? It was they had a Mouse in the Palace episode, but
yeah, I saw.
I can't remember what it was called, but they had one on that hockey team in Connecticut. It was called Danbury Trashers, and he's like, the mob guy was paying us to beat the shit out of people.
Yeah, it's like Unsolved or True Story, one of those.
Yeah. I thought it was so freaking funny. They were just like outright like all these like Canadian like ex-criminals. He's like, I got paid to kill the guy,
There's nice Canadian. Like, see, there's all types of Canadians.
Yeah. But I really think though, if you're tampering for like wins and like stuff like that, like I don't know how isn't that like a criminal offense? Just think about the money, the trail that goes to. That goes to other companies outside the NFL. FanDuel, all those like that, paying out bets and winnings, like that to me, like if your head coach gets caught trying to, shave points off for games for wins and losses, he should lose his ability to own a team ever. He should lose assets, and he should probably, have some criminal investigation against him.
Yeah, and they'll see if they pulls, going back to that point, if this lawsuit will have merit and it'll go as long as it's supposed to. Yeah, that is breaking the law. I'm not too sure this civil suit, and then they're able to change it to a criminal one. I missed that Law and Order episode, but
I missed them all.
You're right, Al. You're right, Brian. That is, they're outlying a crime, and because it's the NFL and it's key, maybe they'll just do the court of public opinion than the other courts, I guess.
I mean, if we're being real too, like we've always made exception for whether it's sports players or like actors and actresses or musicians. We've always bent the law for people like almost as a protected class. I know it's like kind of dicey to talk about, but like if we're going to be real about this, like Antonio Brown should be in jail. He should have never seen the field after faking a vaccination card, because that's a federal offense.
Right.
But if we did it, we'd have the feds at our door tomorrow morning. So I think that's been going on forever. I mean, we talk about players like beating their wives and girlfriends. Like no one in their right mind would ever like validate it or support it, but it goes on all the time because we have this tolerance for talent in this culture. It's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Any way to get you to win. And it seems as much more apparent now in the NFL, in this time of the NFL.
Oh yeah, it's a multi-billion-dollar product. Just think about it that way. Always follow the money.
Insane. But yeah, with that.
I don't mean to get that
Oh
was
no,
too
it's good.
ending for Tom Brady.
No, it's good. You're good. It's a productive conversation either way. But yeah, it's true. But bottom line, the Flores stuff that this like I said, this is either a landmark case that will change a lot of things, that will lead to new owners, or that could lead to new ownership, that could lead to identity of a team being perceived and changed negatively, or you know, this goes the opposite. But I think we need to let this, or they need to let this play out. And with Tom Brady, we always have Tom Brady talk about the GOAT, and whether good or bad, he is a big part of our childhood, of our lives until where we're at now. And it's something else. Tom Brady. But on to the next generation. And we're going to talk about what happened this past weekend. We'll first start with the AFC Championship, guys. And who would have thought? My prediction was just so close. But that's just me selfishly saying that. But the Cincinnati Bengals, for the first time in 33 years, they are going to the Super Bowl. They win the AFC Championship. They knock off Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, winning by a final score of 27-24 in overtime. Oh boy, Joe Burrow, baby. The guy tore his ACL. And then a year later, he is in the Super Bowl. This guy deserves his praise. There's a reason why he's so likable. He's Joe Cool for a reason, and he beat Patrick Mahomes at home. That is saying something. It worked great off the ball. Huge game for the offense. And at first, it looked like it was a disaster on defense. It was 21-3 at one point, and then for the defense almost shut out Mahomes completely in the second half. Like a tale between two different teams and on two different sides of the ball between two different halves. And Joe Burrow, baby, he's gone. Mahomes loses. We don't have to hear about Jackson Mahomes and his wife either. So wins all over the place. How do we feel about Joe Burrow knocking off Mahomes and leading Cincy to a Super Bowl?
So happy. I'm so happy. It's just nice to
happy.
see. It's a good story. You know what I mean? It's a good story. Like, no, it's nothing better to see a team that's ahead of schedule with a rebuilding team make it to the Super Bowl. That doesn't happen. That does not happen whatsoever. Now, do I think they've lucked out and had some breaks? Absolutely. Do I think the Titans, Tannehill, imploding on himself, and, Pat Mahomes yet again going into my comparison, he really is like Aaron Rodgers, that I think he is more of a hidden ego kind of guy that sometimes messes with his play. Absolutely. And, they got some good breaks, but this is a good football team. It's exciting. It's nice to see. I like the offense. Their offense is amazing. If they get an offensive line, they might take up the Chiefs dynasty right from them. Watching the game, I just saw, a typical, Midwest kind of grunt, Ohio style of play right there. You know what I mean? We're going to grind this out. We're going to punch you in the face. We're going to keep on going no matter what the score is. And they got some lucky breaks here and there, right? But it really worked out for them. If I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, you should be in trouble right now. You should be very scared because you have the best team, probably roster-wise, offense in the league, and you have a defense that is middle of the pack, which is what you need because you need cap space due to the contracts on your offense. I would be in a lot of trouble right now. I'd be scared. Because if Pat Mahomes is seeing ghosts, or he's starting to get a little bit of an ego trip, or and he's not, studying film or something like that, like I want to know. We might find out, 5-10 years later from now that there's been some shaky stuff with Pat Mahomes and that he's really just trying to rely on his talent. I want to see if he's more of a student. Now I want to see the student of the game. I want to see him kind of Brady-esque now after just relying on that raw talent, which Aaron Rodgers really never, in my eyes, fully became the cerebral mind of Brady, which I wanted to see. I'm seeing Aaron Rodgers in Mahomes right now, and I need him to go to Brady and not Rodgers.
Yeah. I thought the turning point in the game was that final stand before the half that really just changed the momentum of the entire game. I thought
not kicking the field goal.
Yeah, not taking 3 points when you easily could have went up 2 scores. I thought that was a huge play because one thing we don't talk about very often in sports is unintended consequences. So we talk about the advantages of going for it and this and that, but we rarely talk about the unintended consequences, especially when you're in, when you're in the red zone and it's perceived that you really have nothing to lose. But that really changed going into the half, and Cincinnati players in the post game talked about it. They never looked back after that last stand, and I thought that they came out feisty and hungry. They turned the dial up on defense with their front four and Hendrickson. Those corners got after it. They played discipline. They didn't get beat by the big play in the second half, and they kept Mahomes at bay. I thought he got a little too cute, but I also think that the defense dialed it up to a point where they took him off kilter and he started second guessing himself. I think that Andy Reid got too cute with the play calling all year, and it reared its ugly head in that game. I think they should be very concerned moving forward, like Brian said, because not only was the offense unsure of itself all year, but once they got kind of stasis and they got level 50-50 play from both units, from all three units for that matter, and Spagnuolo's defense, got itself together and collected. I thought that the defense was no longer the problem; the offense was the problem going into the playoffs, and they got a little too sure of themselves and ahead. And I think that winning the way they did in Buffalo gave them a false sense of confidence going into this game. I don't think they really looked at Cincinnati as seriously as they thought they should. And I'll be honest, like I thought this was going to be a blowout and a rout. And to some degree, the first half looked like it was going that way, but it was one of those things where Joe Cool just they've overcome obstacles all season long, and they knew not to get over their skis, and they came in through the clutch. I think that Joe Burrow's story, like that's why we love sports. We just love the stories. We fall in love with these teams that are underdogs. I think Zach Taylor has come such a long way from being a tanking team and in 3 years' time turning this team into a Super Bowl appearing team. And I think that it's going to be one hell of a Super Bowl. I really like seeing these fresh faces in it.
So hitting on that point, especially Alex, and I'll also throw it to Brian. One of the things we talked about, obviously, is Mahomes and Reed. Those are the two culprits to blame for this loss. And I'm going to simply ask you guys, who do you think is more to blame for this loss? Is it Mahomes or Reed? For me, I think it's Mahomes. Can't use that trigger figure. There are plenty of times we saw some open lanes, We saw some open routes, especially with Kelsey, especially towards the latter half of the fourth quarter and in overtime, where he just straight up didn't throw it to him. We saw then the pressure just mount, and it was like a brand new day for the Bengals. They were able to rush him. They were able to, put a lot of pressure, and that led to Mahomes. And it's clearly, whether it was this game or the Super Bowl against Tampa, when we see Mahomes run around in circles like almost a cartoon, he's not going to throw it. He's not going to make connections. He rarely does. So that's another thing that defenses can take away back, is if you make him run and use his feet and you have good coverage on the wideouts, it's inevitable. He's not exactly an accurate passer in the sense that he could just throw it into someone's hands right away, right even in the smallest windows. I think that could take some time. He's only 25 years old. So I think Mahomes was really exposed in this game that can help defenses moving forward. So he's the one to blame ultimately in my eyes.
So I take the opposite one. I think it's Andy Reid, and I also think it's the general manager of the Chiefs. On a team like this, like your defense, the defense is the main priority of your offseason acquisitions. Just how they're going about it. It's like Seattle with their offensive line. They just choose not to go about going at a major concern in free agency. They rather build up what they're good at. They had a patchwork really offensive line, and it really gets shown in games like this where they play great front sevens. He got sacked 4 times, and it happened a lot in the fourth quarter, and that's why you had those 4 and outs, 3 and outs for the Chiefs. It comes down to that Patrick Mahomes doesn't like getting hit. I think he should no longer have to wear the red penny jersey in practice and should learn to take sacks, QB hurries, and everything like that, because he needs to learn to be under duress more in the pocket, because we've seen now time and time again, when you give him pressure, he cracks. Look at the Super Bowl against the Bucs. Look at this game. Look at this game again in Week 17 this season, when they played the Bengals and lost to the Bengals in Week 17. He needs to learn how to, take pressure more. And I also think they need to focus more on the run game. I don't think Edwards-Helaire is the answer. And I think they need to find a more north and south runner, because they have a guy like McKinnon and they have Hardman, a receiver, that they could do their, sweeps and jet sweeps and, different type of, tosses and outside zone plays. They really need to find a north and south runner. So those are my comments.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely putting a lion's share of the blame on Andy Reid's feet, because Mahomes he's notorious for going in these kind of hot cold slumps between halves. He's done it through the regular season. I think the first 8 weeks of the year kind of proved that case, and they really had to shift their approach on to how they were going to run this offense. We knew going into the year that they had 3 new guys on the offensive line. They had huge holes to fill, and I think that the one thing that was never addressed was a consistency with the run attack and the run game. And I think that getting away from the run in the second half was a huge culprit to why they collapsed the way they did. And when you become one-dimensional, it's more weight on Patrick Mahomes' shoulders, and it's a lot more demanding for him to become Superman in a game where he didn't have to be. And I think there needs to be clear communication on who's actually making the play call, because whether it's Andy Reid or Bieniemy, there needs to be a strategic game plan for how they conduct themselves in the red zone and maximize their opportunities down there, because, throughout the game entirely, because you need to really be efficient on offense. It can't just be explosive plays to Tyreek and Kelsey on the wideouts. There needs to be a clear, concerted effort to keep a defense at bay and at duress, and it looked like Cincinnati figured them out by early on in the third quarter, and especially in the fourth quarter.
Excellent points from you, gentlemen. And now I will say also, anything else who else really stuck out with you, the Bengals, besides Joe Cool, obviously, who really made the impacts? One thing I said is if the Bengals successfully run the ball, that they could create huge pressure for the defense and be put into good positions. And that ultimately panned out. Joe Mixon with 21 rushes, 88 yards, pretty solid and good stuff. And then Jamar Chase, T. Higgins doing their thing. Losing Uzma at the beginning of the game, I thought would be a bad sign, but he looks fine, and he looks like he'll be able to return to the team on the Super Bowl. And then we'll obviously discuss that next week. But who else really was the it factor for the Bengals besides Joe Cool?
In my eyes, it was Trey Hendrickson. He had, I call him a poor man's J.J. Watt. 14 sacks on the season. See how many tackles for loss did he have? If they have that stat, they don't say how many tackles for loss on ESPN, but I remember he had a good amount. He had like 3 forced fumbles in this game. He had 4 tackles, tackle for a loss, 2 QB hits, and 1.5 sacks. And against a guy like Mahomes, you need pressure, and he consistently now, 3 seasons in a row, 2 for the Saints and 1 for the Bengals, has shown that he is a premier pass rusher as a true, like defensive end, like playing that, head up 5 tech, not more of like a Von Miller outside linebacker kind of hybrid. He's a pure, hand in the ground D end, and he's showing more and more that he has star potential in the league.
Yeah, I think Hendrickson was definitely like the biggest factor for me, especially in that front 4 and getting pressure in the second half. I think obviously Von Bell with the interception, that kind of goes without saying. That changed the entirety of the game. But I think Sam Hubbard too. Quietly he had 2 sacks and kind of was the the right hand to Hendrickson, dialing up pressure. We kind of knew going into the offense we kind of knew going into the game that Cincinnati's offense was going to be high powered and going to be free flowing and streaming, and that Jamar Chase was going to demand at least a double, if not more pressure in his own package. So they kind of achieved what I expected them to with the offense. I was pleasantly surprised with how much pressure they could get with their front four, and of course, like their corners coming through in the second half.
Yeah, this is it. And it has led to a result that we could all get behind. And then I guess my last question here for the Chiefs, if you want to reiterate to Brian, you think they need to work on their rushing game, maybe put somebody more premium there if they could. I don't know, go for someone in the draft. I know it's not that heavy of a running back draft or that deep. Alex, is there anything else you also think with the Chiefs that they could moving forward? Everybody's getting a year older. Kelsey is, I think, 33. Not gonna play forever. If you want that window there, and also attest to Tom Brady's greatness, people thought Mahomes will nonchalantly win a Super Bowl, and it isn't that easy. So, what do you think the Chiefs have to go from here after this tough loss? They really dropped the ball here in front of their home fans too.
I think it was just a check to their hubris. I think that it kind of it was a waking up period, just understanding that these teams are coming at you with their best football, and you need to take every possession seriously, take every down seriously, and not go for the home run plays, but take what the defense gives you at times, even if it's not flashy. I think they kind of need to get back to basics in the offseason, just for the simple fact of playing and executing a more efficient game for 4 quarters.
Yeah, couldn't say it any better.
I would like to see them go back to a more Jamal Charles, Alex Smith style offense, because like I mentioned with Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers, when you have a guy making all the plays and all the moves, it's easy to key up on him and get some picks, rattle his cage a little bit, and then the game's done. So therefore, they need discipline, and they need to go back to game management with a top quarterback. Now, his stats might go down and his touchdowns might go down, but if you're winning Super Bowls like Brady, because he had a bunch of years where his stats were, up there, but they weren't crazy. He didn't always have 40 TD seasons. He was in sometimes the high 29s, low 30s, which was awesome. And, he was really good in QBR and overall quarterback rating and really just making those throws. That's why we always thought, if he went to another team, would he be as good, because we thought it was just the Patriot system, right? So now we need that kind of system for Mahomes in a sense, because we know we have the potential. Now let's do a reverse and get him a correct system besides just gunslinging. So I'm looking at the free agent running backs right now. I don't think they would get Melvin Gordon because he's too much money, but you got a guy like Leonard Fournette. You got Philip Lindsay, who's a good running back that just got, shit out of luck when it came to the Broncos and now is getting tossed around. You have a guy like Cordero Patterson, which would probably fit in amazing on that team. You have a guy like Rashad Penny, who's playing amazing for Seattle. You have Sony Michel that played well, Marlon Mack. You have all these guys that are low cost, and I just named a bunch of guys in the last 2 seasons have had 1,000-yard rushing seasons.
Yeah.
Because of lack of opportunity, they're not getting play in where they are right now just because of drafting or injury and stuff like that. So I'm one of those guys. And your first 2 picks should be offensive linemen.
And I think the one grave mistake people make is they conflate the myth that the running back position is dead or it's devalued in the league. I think that it's just evolved to the point where you have guys that can be no-name draft picks from the 5th, 6th round really overachieve and have 1,000+ multi-purpose yard seasons because they're in the right system. So with that said, I think in all respects to any running backs, you can plug any kind of guy in, whether they be a no name or a top level guy like a Najee Harris who just got into the league last year. You can have those dual backs, but it's the scheme you surround them with. So just like you said, getting back to a reduced style of offense, which is more buttoned up, more balance between the run game and the play action passing game, and taking your shots when they're open and available to you if you're Pat Mahomes, but not necessarily outweighing the icing from the cake,
Definitely no, for sure. And as always, this is why we love football, for these little surprises. And it was just good quality football. I mean, maybe the second half was where it was at, but it was ultimately a fun game to watch. And now we go to the NFC side. It wound up being a sad day for Jimmy G and the 49ers, and then a monumental one for the 49ers and the Rams. The 49ers take down the LA Rams take down the San Francisco 49ers by a score of 20-17. 14 unanswered fourth quarter points led to a stellar ending. Oh boy, what a different game. This was a real defensive battle until it wasn't really. And, it started off with high momentum for the 49ers, the turnovers. Matt Stafford didn't play his best game, but it was good enough. And then Jimmy G looked like he was literally about to beat the haters. And yet it just went all downhill with it ends with an ugly side swipe pass that ultimately got picked off in his own end zone. And that ended it. The LA Rams now, Sean McVay back in the Super Bowl was such a scary roster, and they're just a game away and winning it all. So where do we start with this game? I guess we have to talk about the elevator room. Jimmy G, we said he's going to be a big factor, and he almost lived up to expectations, but he ultimately bottomed out, which led to a John Lynch emotional hug that we saw on Twitter. I think it's fair to say he's gone, and the 49ers are going to restart. Looks like Trey Lance is the guy. And when what was a Cinderella season ends in another painful defeat for San Fran. But the guy of the hour there was Jimmy G. How do we feel about his performance in this game?
I think he had a great first half. I think the second half, he did okay. Unfortunately, he's going to get remembered for that one interception, which I'm pretty sure was tipped as well.
Yeah, it was.
It was tipped. So, I feel bad for him because, he did have some 2 rocky games, but he's like an Alex Smith game manager kind of player where, in my eyes, for San Francisco, you really don't know what you have in Trey Lance. I don't really like how he played in the games he did play this season. Just like his style of play, I like more of a pocket passer. And I think for that team, just because of that system, I think that's better than a dual kind of threat quarterback where Trey Lance does have that ability to run the ball. And when you did see him, he was in like a read option kind of sense, running the ball more in the red zone. I think he's not going to be in San Francisco, even though I think he's the locker room. He's like the blood and soul of that 49ers locker room, unfortunately. And they're about to tear it out, and I don't know how that's going to respond. You could look at all of those guys like Debo and Kittle, and even like the rookie Elijah Mitchell had a fantastic season. Jaquiski Tartt, they all love that guy. And my idea is you just got to the conference championship when he had an okay year. Now, we've seen him when he's had great years. He brought that team to a Super Bowl. Like, let's ride it. Do you not deserve to give him another year now? You have to go into the NFC Championship after almost missing the playoffs, beating the Rams twice in the season already, and then going in at almost – and the only reason, if he doesn't get that pick, he might win and beat him 3 times in a row. So, this offseason, I'm excited for him because I think it's going to hurt for him to leave, but I think there's a lot of opportunities for him to go somewhere because I could tell, will work with him to find a trade partner that he'll actually be happy. So if that's I made a list before, in my eyes, I see him going to a team like the Steelers or the Broncos or the Bucs or the Washington football team. Those are 4 teams that, need that quarterback. I think if he went to Washington, they might actually just win the division next year. And I'm a Cowboys fan, I'll be honest with you, just because they need a little bit more of an upgrade to get a few more wins on that offense. And because the defense is so amazing. So, I'm excited for him that he's going to, actually maybe be given a true chance now with no backup quarterback in, the back round of Smear.
You might be able to add the Panthers to that list too.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I was wondering one thing. It didn't seem that Shanahan trusted Jimmy G overall. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of instances of 4th and short, and the guy, they either would give it and hand it off to Mitchell, and he had a good season, but ultimately the team itself only had 50 rushing yards. And reckon it's going to be tough when you have that scary pass rush, especially a guy named Aaron Donald on that. But it seemed that he played very conservatively and he didn't let him throw as much. And that's why it seems like if they are going to be that nice and let him dictate where he wants to go, good for them. But I think that was also revealing, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
I think it was really a tale of two halves as well. I think that he played a pretty exceptional first half. I mean, a pretty, they played pretty conservatively. They held their own. I think early on it was pretty well established within the game that this was going to be a game of field position. It's going to be a lot of chess back and forth between McVay and Shanahan. It really depended on the one or two plays that they were willing to dial up to really open up some of these possessions. And that's kind of what showed itself in the second half. I think throughout the game, I think San Francisco really had no answers for Cooper Kupp. I think he had a huge night, 2 touchdowns, I believe, 100 plus yards. And they really didn't have, what it boiled down to, which is sad, is that it was an unintended turnover from Jimmy G that kind of cost him the game, whereas he really put him in the position to still have a chance to win that game. And if you look at his overall winning record, even if they've been lackluster performances, that I think they were 35-16 overall with him behind the helm. So it is unfortunate because they're going to be left with the decision whether they throw Trey Lance to the wolves into a raw West Coast offense that is high-powered, strong rushing attack, but you don't really know what you're going to get with Trey Lance with a limited number of snaps, or do you bring Jimmy G back under a shortened set of circumstances where the impression or the expectation is one more year of tutelage for Trey Lance under that position and give him some more reps and baby steps. So it'll be interesting to see what John Lynch does with that organization, but it was a bummer to see the way they went out despite the kind of season that they've had and what they've overcome. Shout out, props to the Rams. They definitely outplayed and took advantage of all the opportunities that they could. I thought the front four was sensational all night.
Yep.
The secondary was great. The receivers, did their job. OBJ wasn't a distraction. He took care of business as well. So I'm happy for Stafford as well, getting into the Super Bowl. McVay being able to get back to that position, going all in with the organization, with the money that they spent and the capital in the draft that they sacrificed. So I am happy for them, but it does leave undesirable, poor taste in my mouth, knowing that they're probably going to give up on Jimmy G on not knowing where their future may be. I think Kyle Shanahan is still living in the reality that his window of opportunity to win a Super Bowl is open right now. And it starts to dwindle immediately if you put Trey Lance into that starting role. So,
yeah, he's had some tough losses. He's the OC for Atlanta. Obviously gave up a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And then
they both worked together in Washington.
Yeah, him, McVay, and LaFleur.
Right. Yeah.
All assistants.
McVay and Shanahan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think so. Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
You were saying, Brian?
I'll make this comment. In his 2 starting seasons where he played, this season he played 15 games, and 2019 he played 16 games. Jimmy G brought a team to 2 NFC championships and a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I like in my eyes, like I don't care what Trey Lance has right there. He's under contract. Keep him for another year. If he plays well and you really like Trey Lance, you trade him. Because like right now, if I'm Jimmy G, I feel disrespected, and I'm calling Bruce Arians on the phone, and or calling Tom Brady and going, Tom, talk to the Bucks, get me there right now. Because if he went to the Bucks, he could do the same exact thing right now.
Or his porn star ex to help,
Yeah.
Maybe she can make a video of a Zoom video, of course, to help bring people in and show her support that way.
Yeah. And like if you look at his QBR, he was 13th this year. What more do you want from a quarterback that is it's technically a more run heavy offense than pass. Like what do you want from him? I don't know what they expect.
And the way they're constructed, Brian, I mean, when you have a dominant running game like that, you're not designed to come back from huge deficits. So that's why they build these incremental leads. They're conservative on offense taking field goals. I mean, that was what I alluded to in the Cowboys win against you guys. That's how they're constructed. So the one fatal flaw that they just can't step on like a landmine in the field is Jimmy G turning the ball over. That's the only thing they can't do. But unfortunately, that was them being snake bitten in the championship game.
Yeah.
Oh, the pain.
Because Jimmy G is a winner. I mean, he can steady the ship. I think the entire organization knows that he's limited offensively, but that he can win you games.
Yeah. He could thrive when in the right situation. And in my eyes, if you're still going to NFC championships and it comes down to a tip pass interception, like what was the percentage chance of a tipped pass interception on that play? Less than 10?
Yep.
It sucked. And well, again, only time will tell what's going on in San Francisco. And then Alex gave his thoughts with LA. Brian, what did you think of this team and how they just made the great comeback and came alive?
Even though I just, basically said that I really wanted the 49ers to win because Jimmy G, I am happy for the Rams because what would a Super Bowl, which out of the last 4 in the conference championships, in my eyes, what team's Super Bowl win would be more important? That'd be the Rams because they have the amount of Hall of Fame potential players they have. A ring would mean a lot. Matt Stafford, that would get him into the Hall of Fame. Bob Miller having 2, and then say a Super Bowl MVP would mean a lot. It would make Odell be I'm not a locker room killer. I'm actually a good football player and I love the game. You got guys like Aaron Donald. You got Andrew Whitworth, who's playing his old team in the Super Bowl, which is awesome. You know what I mean? You got Eric Weddle. You have all these players on the roster that could really use a Super Bowl ring to really solidify their legacies. And I'm just happy for them. They play the game right. The offense is electric. I think that, it's going to be really exciting and, good for them. They stuck it out.
Yeah. LA, what can you say? Almost what would ever be as a team, the 5-tool equivalent of a football team. And they really, though it took some time and you had to wait, and probably, you had 250 yards between Cooper Kupp and Odell alone. And, that may just only get you 20 points in all, but, especially against a young Bengals team, I think that'll be discussed more next week. But I think that was what really helped this team all in all, is waking up when you had to at the last moment. And San Francisco's defense, especially on the secondary, really improved all at once, and they were still able to find holes in this game. The rushing game was a little underperformed for Los Angeles. Cam Akers 13 yards and 13 carries and only had 48 rushing yards, and Sony Michel 10 carries for 16 yards. That does have to be improved going forward, but ultimately when everything hits and everyone's healthy, when you have Ramsey and you have, as you mentioned, Miller and Donald, and Donald had the key pressure the game, which led to that interception, and that's why he's one of the best defensive players we'll ever see. And everything was clicking, and Sean McVay, it just shows how damn good of a coach he is, because he outcoached his buddy in this. And it's gonna be interesting to see another contemporary. What's up?
And just to reiterate that point too, Matt, I think he really did win the battle of the coaches in this game too, because a lot of these possessions were not just defensive struggles between both teams, which hardcore fans of ours appreciate, but that game of field management and really maximizing possessions and taking, losing an inch to gain a yard. Like, those are the games within the games that Super Bowl winning coaches, those are the games that they manage that make it to the Super Bowl. There's a big difference between what the Chiefs did versus what the Rams did, if you just look at situational offense. So we talk about that the firepower that they have with OBJ and Cooper Kupp. 20 points, all things considered, is a huge win in their eyes versus the game they could have had.
Yep. Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Shout out to one player on the Rams right now because I absolutely respect him completely. Eric Weddle led the LA Rams in total tackles.
Yeah, with 9, I believe, right?
Wow.
Good for him. That man came off the couch after 2 years just working, going on his Bowflex and his Peloton, and literally just put up 9 tackles as a safety, 4 solo, and a tackle for a loss. And he had a pass breakup. Good for him. Congratulations. Go get yourself a ring.
I'm
Another
also
guy
giving
will
a shout
defend
out
it.
for I'm also giving a shout out for Debo because he played his ass off against all odds. He was the best player on that field, in my opinion, between both teams.
Showed a lot of emotion off after.
Yeah.
That's all you ask.
He
And
took
Eric
2
Weddle,
huge blows. He took a huge hit in Green Bay, and he took that devastating hit in midair in that LA game. I thought he was going to be out cold.
no one's stopping him. But all in all, a lot of fun over the weekend. A lot was discussed. And of course, my talented partner, Seer, brought that energy, and we appreciate it. We miss you, Tommy. We'll see you when you're done with college because he has to do his thing there. But ultimately, it was a great time, gentlemen. Thank you for breaking down these 2 games, the Flores suit and Brady. And we'll see you next week when we actually preview this game all in all, compare the Bengals to the Rams. So any other final words, gentlemen, you want to throw out there?
C's get degrees, Tommy, but keep on pushing up to the A's. Let's go.
Seriously,
My
they
parents
get
had
you
that
with your
proud-
loans either way.
My parents had that proud sticker on their bumper sticker. My son is a D student. So aspire for better. Don't be like your man Al. You're gonna be doing great things, Tommy.
Well, great enlightening words of wisdom from you both. Anyways, we'll see you next week as we preview the Super Bowl. That's the great Alex Ranniello and Brian McKeon. See you later, gentlemen. Thanks as always.
Have a good night.
Peace.